Hello and welcome to Shiaght Laa. I'm Fiona McArdle. Fiona McArdle mish as bevali am goltacha siú gus Shiaght Laa. On Shiaght Laa and cute show, in this edition of Shiaght Laa, Car na Bardi, calling the bards, the poets. More from the chair of Isle of Man Poetry Society, Bethany de Legh Runciman. As Laa'l Andreays and St Andrew, the patron saints of Scotland, but to whom a parish and at least one other Manx church were dedicated. In Shiaght Laa a few months ago we heard from Jen Adams, the Outreach and Education Officer to the Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch, about the Manx Nature Show. This is a display coordinated by the Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch and supported by UNESCO Biosphere Isle of Man. More than 20 conservation groups and projects have contributed to bring display boards showcasing their work, and that display has now moved on to Port Erin, where you can see it at the Erin Arts Centre from Tuesday to Friday between 10:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And it's also open during events at the Erin Arts Centre. It's another one for between now and the new year, as it comes to an end on Friday, the 5th of January 2024. One of the events at the Erin Arts Centre, when you'll also be able to see the Manx Nature Show, will be next Monday evening, the 4th of December at 7:30, when Charles Gard will be giving an illustrated talk to the Russian Heritage Trust on the history of Manx tourism. Tickets for the talk are £6 or £5 for Friends of Russian Heritage Trust. Tourism was once the mainstay of the Manx economy, and Charles Gard explains how it all started, which was long before most people imagine, and how the island adapted to the annual influx of hundreds of thousands of people. He'll be highlighting some of the more challenging aspects of running a boarding house, and there will be lots of photographs, amusing anecdotes, and a few naughty postcards as well. That's this coming Monday evening, the 4th of December at 7:30 in the Erin Arts Centre. On Shiaght Laa and Kirk, Hielshin McKeon Lurish William Wordsworth. Huggan enam a tour, ons cumma je cashtal beg, higher troggle ons by hoolish, a ceann a scur gawach, ceann a scur de jaru ons gilk. Red high, William de Lungan Murchurica, as ho at vagus de cas pert hoolish. Hug Wordsworth molia de regera William Hillary, son eober ons sauel bechen voshach hiden, ons an undain hier. Te de meierinne, de Doug William Wordsworth kunta je screw bardacht. Red doorte de denke viam ne, ta ahaishit ons cunis. Ons inne je screw ridden jach treva ne ro njartel, honneke tre lug shen, tre odach e se shis, a smunichten McKeon rudden verdachet, a scrutacha negen hin. Ve geri genu ima jo shen, ons kershis se smunichten chush. A sajaka machen a scronal, lug de kjou tre kurtaste, den acht va imnegen benten rishin. Ons inne je geba kurkunta treve fos griset. Dashen nichen haiku yes, ons Shiaght Laa, as an acht dadsen geba fornu and tullach a hurten. We heard from the chairman of the Isle of Man Poetry Society, Bethany de Legh Runciman, talking about the Poetry Trail, which will be held from the 10th of February to the 10th of March 2024. However, there's a lot of work to be done before then to prepare the entries so that the judges don't know who's written them, and then for the adjudication to be made and the 10 winning entries to be prepared as posters to go up in Douglas City Centre. This really is the crunch time, as Bethany will want your entries by tomorrow, Friday the 1st of December. As it's rather late, your best bet is to contact Bethany by email, which is poetry@manxcat, all one word, .org.uk, or by phone on 481 792. That's poetry@manxcat.org.uk, or you can ring 481 792. But we also had a chance to talk more generally about poetry So here's Bethany to tell us more.
We encourage people to join the Poetry Society. It's only £20 a year, but the booklets, we produce 2 booklets a year called Manx Reflections. They're beautifully designed by Tony, and our editor is Hazel Tear. Any member of the Poetry Society can put forward as many poems as they want to be included into the booklets. We usually have about 20 different poets. They're all different styles of poetry, themes of poetry, because poetry is inclusive. It doesn't matter whether you've done poems for 20 years or just 20 days. It's a poem is about your expression of emotion and feelings, and it's your stamp, it's your mark. It doesn't have to conform to any rules. People get very het up about it should be rhyming. Well, it is nice to have rhyming poetry, but sometimes it's also just as well to have the free verse. I don't write many poems these days, but the poems I write tend to be free verse. But yes, we've had all sorts of topics and themes for these poems over the years, ranging from, I had a poem about dog poo, but obviously the Isle of Man features quite strongly in all of this as well. Various parts of the Isle of Man. We have seasons. If you want to think of a poem, think of a theme first, and then just write down as many words you can think of about that theme, and then build sentences with them, looking for rhyming pairs. And if you want to have some good rhyming pairs, there are some that are better. Things like cat, hat, mat, sat, fat. I've been into Peel Clothworkers School and worked with the year 5 pupils for a workshop. I was amazed by the standard of poetry they're producing, and the children were so enthusiastic about it all. And we did the subject of autumn, so we were doing about leaves and about the colour, shape, size, texture of leaves, what you do with leaves, and the children I didn't give them too long, so they're probably in about 20 minutes. Some were actually producing a couple of paragraphs of poetry, but even the people who were struggling a bit, the children, they were getting some sentences together. And then it's just, I was finding with one class, they were writing really prose rather than poetry. Prose is different from poetry. Poetry are short lines, prose are like flowing long lines. So this is one of the things about a poem. It's quite short and snappy. So if you are writing prose, then look at where you're putting the full stops. Could that actually be the end of a line of poem, and then the next line goes below that? Yeah.
I know the Isle of Man Poetry Society has monthly get-togethers. Now, do you have workshops as well? You described the workshop that you held in Peel Clothworkers. Do you hold other workshops for perhaps an older age range?
Well, not at the moment, really. We have our poetry pop-in, so it starts at 7:30 in the evening, goes on till 9:30, although we have a break in the middle. And it's at the Archibald Knox in the meeting room there, in the pub meeting room in Onchan. So, and we just, we gather around, we share our poems or poems of others, and it's a very informal, light-hearted, it's positive criticism only. So if you are new to poetry and you are not very keen on reading out your own poems, we recommend that you come along, because we often find people gain the confidence when they're actually in the room with poets to speak out. But then, you don't have to read out anything. You can just come and listen. The poetry pop-in in December is the 3rd of December, and then it'll goes back to the 3rd Sunday of the month in January, February. we don't. Well, we're starting some open mic sessions. We've done one in the Manx Legion pub. We're hoping in Douglas. We're hoping to have more sessions in the Manx Legion this year. I would like to do more poetry workshops in schools. There are a range of people on the island doing things. There's a lady who is in the Kensington Arts Centre. She runs an evening class for children, and I'm pretty sure she started one for adults now. The Manx Bard, Boxy Closs, is talking about writing workshops. We also have Jackie Murray Grace on the island. So if you look out for Jackie Murray Grace, she's running some open mic sessions, mainly I think in Peel with the Black Dog Pizza Oven. And then Jackie also runs something called Penny Productions as well, where that's sort of performance poetry. Yeah, there's two sides of poetry. There's the reading and writing of poetry, and there's the performance side. Some people will be stronger at one than the other, but it's a good way to start with the open mics.
No. You mentioned Manx Reflections, the magazine, and the editor, as you mentioned, is Hazel Tear. Of course, Hazel was instrumental in starting the poetry slams and open mic sessions, wasn't she? And Jackie Murray Grace is a past winner, well, several times winner, isn't she, of the poetry slam?
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, Hazel Tear has been in the society a long, long time, and she was running open mic nights in Castletown. So she's we're trying to get the Poetry Society open mics back and running. We have an annual poetry slam, where I saw about 16 of the Highlands' best poets. We met in Noah Bakehouse. Bridge Carter, she's been in the society a long time. She's run quite a few poetry slam competitions. And we actually had Howard Kane from Manx Radio won the last one, and he's brilliant. In fact, I think he's won 2. Jackie Murray Grace has won 3 of them, but Bridge Carter, I think, won the first one of the poetry slams we did back in Jabberwocky Cafe. I mean, come and have a go, or come and watch people who are absolutely brilliant at their craft.
Chair of the Isle of Man Poetry Society, Bethany de Legh Runciman, and some of her thoughts about poetry and the Society's hopes of holding further open mic nights and poetry slams. Meanwhile, the next Isle of Man Poetry Society meeting to share poems will be this Sunday evening, the 3rd of December, in the meeting room at the Archibald Knox pub in Onchan, starting at 7:30. Ons na Helen and Goldach, ha neoch Breton tone, red han nu patrúnach David, na Dowie, nu and Charn, Vine and Gia heen. Ons mannen ha nel nu patrúnach ein, och Hellie nu, eg Jersey, henk Foshen Velg. As Samson nu, eg Guernsey, henk Foshen Britain. Pirren nu, shen nu patrúnach Jane Corn, henk Foshen Jeren. Patrick na Peric nu patrúnach Jane Nerin, henk Fosh Breton. Shorus na George nu, J. Thorson as Andrews nu, J. Nolban, henk Fosh Palestine. Ta bratach Nolban na Saltia Chroshet Vain, Coolin Gorm, ta Jichen Duen and Kainla J. Nolban as Andrew nu. Rarish tradition, Huglesh Mainach Emnasit Regulus, Onslagen, Narul, Crowan Andrew, Lug Ashlish, Treve Inchit Day, the Her Leshad the Spall, Soja a tail, Merveega Treshen. Gather out Andrew na you, as Becha ons Palestine, Henken Enemega Vain Hregish, as Van a Hunan Veginu Imache, Rish Dehid Blaine, Nana Smoo, Roshen. Treva Andrew Heenbeo, van a Romani, Rail Harish and Talu Shen. Ta fost on stead, fierce echnet, ear Jew. With this programme being broadcast first on Laa'l Andreays, St Andrew's Day, the 30th of November, we're going to look at dedications to him here in the island. And we start in Douglas, And then churchwarden Michael Ellis is our guide to Kirk Andreays.
With the proximity of the island to Scotland, and with the attraction for many years to Scottish traders of the islands being the centre of the running trade, and then of course with the advent of the Dukes of Atholl as the Lords of Man, the island built up quite a sizable Scottish community. For a number of years they worshipped in their own way in a number of places around Douglas. But then in 1832, the factor or agent of the Duke of Atholl at the time, James Macrone, who was not a popular man with the Manx people, but James Macrone was instrumental in obtaining some land in the area where I'm standing now, and that's in what's called Finch Road. It was originally named for a family called Vinch rather than Finch, and in this area there at one time the Vinch Gardens. However, when it developed, one of the developments at the instigation of James Macrone was what was known as the Scotch Kirk, and this was a Presbyterian church where the Scottish community could come together and worship. In 1867, the site was redeveloped with the architect John Robinson providing a design for a church, and we can still see a vestige of it here in Finch Road to this day, because although the main part of the church was demolished to make way for the building of a modern office block, the tower was retained as an important feature, and it's an attractive construction in a darker stone, but the corners and various features of it are picked out in lighter material. And then at the top there is a spire, and again that's picked out at the corners in the lighter material, which makes it soar up to the sky. However, the difficulty of bringing together a congregation in the centre of a bustling town, by the 1980s it was decided that it would be a good idea to relocate. And so St Andrews bought up a property that had been built for the Isle of Man Scouting Association on Glencrutchery Road. The redevelopment of the main part of the church as office space came in the 1980s, and in 1987, in fact, the congregation of St Andrews moved up to Glencrutchery Road, and St Andrews Church can be found there on Glencrutchery Road today. Unfortunately, coming down to Finch Road and St Andrews House, with the tower of the former St Andrews Church still standing, I see that it's actually to let, and unfortunately the building is closed up. However, going across the road and peering in through the glass doors, I can see to the left on a low concrete pedestal that there is a large church bell from St Andrews, and to the right there are some doors going through into the base of the tower itself. Unfortunately, we can't go in and have a look at those at the moment. So that was St Andrew's Church here in Douglas. However, of course, famously, on the north of the island, we have Laa'l Andreays, the parish dedicated to St Andrew.
The origins of the church go back way into the distance when they had the ancient keels. By the end of the 18th century, 1791, the building was in pretty poor condition, and the locals applied to Tynwald for permission to construct a new church. And that permission was granted, I think, in 1801 or 1802. But it took them a few years to gather the money together to be able to do it, and so it was probably about 1820 when it was completed. There wasn't any suitable stone round here, so they had to go to a quarry in Solby to get the material. And it was originally built, it was smaller than this, but a big improvement on the old keel. And then in the 1860s, they decided that as the population was growing, they needed to extend the church. And they built the walls higher and put a new roof on it, and put a tower at one of the ends with a bell on it. And they were quite frugal. They used the slates off the old church, as well as new slates, and they were of different colours. When you look at the outside of the church, you will notice that the roof is striped. The old tiles are paler than the modern slates that they used in 1869, which by that time, of course, they were importing slates from Wales. So that's why there's the two different colours. But it's still there today, with the paler tiles, the originals, and the darker ones, those that we used later. The upper part of the wall was the extension in 1869, and that was when the rose window at the top was installed. And at the same time, they built the tower, which then was twice the height that it is now. When the Second World War came along and they had an RAF station at Andreas, they became concerned that the tower was too high and that it was likely that a plane would crash into it. So the War Office ordered the middle part of the tower to be removed. They did it very carefully. They numbered each of the stones that they removed, and they were carefully stacked in a field nearby. Unfortunately, by the time the end of the war came, quite a few of the stones had disappeared. You'll see them in various houses and walls around. But the parish church council at that time, at the end of the war, decided that because the War Office had offered to pay for rebuilding the tower, that instead of rebuilding the tower, they'd have the money and use it to buy an electric motor for the organ, so that we didn't have to have little boys and girls pumping the organ pump. You'll see here, we're walking along the side of the organ now, and at the end of it, there is this.
Oh, yes.
And that is what they used to do. They would do. You can hear the bellows going. And that's how they ran the organ before we had the electric motor. Right. So some benefit came of it.
Now, Kirk Andreays is one of the 17 ancient parishes of the island, but these days, of course, things have changed in that light as well. It's now part of the parish of the Northern Plain.
Yes, that was an amalgamation which was forced on us, really, by the reduction in the number of people attending churches, reduction which has been going on ever since the First World War. And in the Northern Plain, it was decided that they wanted to retain as many of the buildings that we'd got. And so they decided to appoint one member of the clergy to deal with 6 churches. So we have lay readers doing morning prayer in various churches, and the rector, as he is here at Andreas, pops round each church throughout the month doing Holy Communion in 1, sometimes 2.
And St Andrew is portrayed in the rose window.
In the middle of the what we call the rose window, St Andrew is portrayed in his fishing boat on the Sea of Galilee. And there's 5 little symbols around that portrayal of Andrew, showing fishes in the sea, birds in the air, and stars in the sky. And his boat has on it a little flag at the back with the saltire of Scotland. And we've got to remember, of course, that the Isle of Man was governed by the Scots in the Middle Ages, first of all by the Scandinavians and then the Scots, before the English became involved. And it was during the rule of the Scots that the parishes in the Isle of Man were formed. And obviously they were going to name one parish after the patron saint of Scotland, and it happened to be us.
Good of my order. Thank you very much indeed.
Churchwarden Michael Ellis telling us about Kirk Andreays a couple of years ago, in fact. And before that, we were in Finch Road in Douglas to see the surviving tower and spire of John Robinson's 1867 St Andrew's Church. Och nish, Shiaght Laa Shiaght Laa. But for now, that's it from Shiaght Laa, and Marilyn Crellin will be here with you next time. But now, from me, och nish Fiona McArdle, slane you.